New York, 10 minutes before the 1977 blackout. The city is illuminated, the streets are still full, the windows shine, as if nothing was wrong. This is a historical recreation of the final minutes before New York plunged into darkness, not of the blackout itself, but of the fragile silence that came before. No alarm, no warning, just a whole city relying on the light, not knowing that she was about to disappear. Stay here, 'cause after living those minutes, you'll never look at a city same way again. It's summer night in New York. The air is heavy, hot, almost sticking to the skin. Even so, the city does not slow down. On the contrary, the streets are still full, the traffic lights flash at the same pace as always, the buildings are still lit up as if they were eternal. There's something almost arrogant about that whole light, as if the city were saying in silence, "Nothing stops me." Inside the apartments, fans spin without rest. In some places, the air conditioner struggles to beat the heat. People lean against the window for a moment, just to feel if the night has brought any relief. He didn't. Outside, the distant sound of cars, horns, and conversations mixes with the constant hum of electricity, keeping everything alive. In stores still open, cash registers work normally. Someone makes a quick purchase, another looks at the clock in a hurry. No one thinks about darkness. No one imagines the city without light. In New York, light is almost a promise. It has always been there, it has always worked. Trusting her is automatic. The radio plays songs from the time, bringing a strange feeling of normality, almost comfort. Even in a difficult year with social tensions, extreme heat, and problems that everyone feels, there is this collective idea that the city can handle everything. He always held on. It will always hold on. That's what makes that moment so quietly dangerous, because behind the illuminated facades and the constant movement, the system that underpins it all is already being pushed beyond its limit, not dramatically, not with visible explosions or glitches, just required a little more than it should. More energy, more load, more confidence. But no one on the street notices. And why would he notice? The light is still on. The subway still works. Elevators go up and down. The city delivers exactly what it has always delivered, the feeling of control. And perhaps that's where the most disturbing detail lies. There is no fear at this time. There is no warning, there is only routine. People walking without looking up. People entering the house without imagining that this would be one of the last times, that night, that they would press a switch waiting for the light to respond. The viewer feels it almost without realizing it. Everything seems too normal. It is an entire city living its final minutes of tranquility without knowing it. A collective of millions of people trapped in the same silent illusion that tomorrow begins exactly the same as today, that the light does not fail, that New York is too big to stop. And while the city remains illuminated, confident, proud of its own resistance, time begins to close around her, not with noise, not in a hurry, but with a silence that no one hears. Yet, while the city remains bright and confident, something very different happens away from the eyes of those who walk the streets. It is not visible, it doesn't make noise, it does not appear in headlines. It's the kind of thing that only exists behind the scenes, and precisely for this reason it is usually ignored. New York's electrical system is already at its limit, not by a single mistake, nor by a sudden major collapse, but by a silent sum of decisions, excessive heat and confidence built up over time. Everything works, but it works stretched, tensioned, like a wire pulled beyond what it should. There are technical records, there are measurements that do not exactly match the ideal, small oscillations that in isolation do not seem serious enough to stop an entire city. These are details that only make sense when looked at together, and almost no one is looking at it that way. At some point, someone realizes that something isn't entirely right, maybe not out of fear but out of discomfort, a non-standard data here, an overload there, nothing that seems too urgent. After all, New York has been through worse. This phrase, repeated over the years, ends up becoming a collective anesthetic, And that's exactly where the danger lies. There is no panic behind the scenes. There is routine, procedures being followed, adjustments being made to hold on a little longer. The idea is simple. Hold on until peak demand passes. Just a few more minutes, just one more effort. The city needs to continue functioning. Meanwhile, outside, no one feels anything. A couple chats on the sidewalk without haste. A taxi stops at a red light. A salesman closes the store imagining that the day ended like any other. There are no visual warning signs, there are no sirens, there are no messages. The silence is complete. This is the kind of moment that history usually hides. Because there is no apparent drama, there is no clear villain, only human choices made under pressure, excessive trust, and the deep belief that the system will hold up, as it always has. But systems don't feel pride. They are not afraid. They just reach the limit. And when that happens, there is no negotiation possible. The narrative here does not accelerate. On the contrary, it slows down. It makes the viewer realize something uncomfortable. The point of no return is rarely accompanied by a great warning. Sometimes it arrives disguised as normality. The signs were there, technical, silent, almost invisible to those who didn't know where to look. But, as happens so often in history, they were treated as noise, not as warning. And while the city was still illuminated, confident, believing that everything was under control, the clock was ticking, no rush, without fanfare, just counting the minutes that no one knew were the last. The final minutes come unceremoniously. Nothing changes abruptly. The city continues to breathe at the same pace, as if time had decided to respect the routine until the last second. That's what makes it all so unsettling. Normality persists. In some apartment, someone gets up to get a glass of water. The hallway lamp is still on. On a corner, a group laughs. Loudly, oblivious to the heat that does not seem to subside. A bus brakes, the doors open. People enter and leave with the usual naturalness. Nobody looks up thinking about the power grid. No one imagines that that light, so common, is about to become a memory. There is an almost cruel detail in these moments. The small human choices continue to happen. Paying a bill, crossing the street, pressing an elevator button, closing the door of the house. The city does not pause to reflect. She continues. And precisely for this reason, he does not protect himself. Behind the scenes, the system no longer has a margin. There is no more, just a little more. The balance is fragile, sustained by seconds that seem the same as the previous ones, but are not. It's like walking on thin ice without hearing the crack. Everything seems solid until it ceases to be. The tension here comes not from the noise, but from the absence of it. There is no advertisement. There is no public countdown. The viewer feels something difficult to explain. The weight of what was not said. History at this point does not scream. She whispers. Light still illuminates facades. The buildings continue to draw the skyline that the world recognizes. New York is still New York. And this is perhaps the most dangerous thought of all, the certainty that the city is too big to fail. But history does not respect size. She respects limits. And the limits have already been crossed. These last few minutes carry a silent paradox. The more normal everything seems, the closer is the instant that will divide the night into two distinct times, the before and everything that comes after. But no one there knows that. Only those who observe from the outside, those who watch, feel the tightness in their chest. This is where the script stops. There is no darkness described. There is no chaos shown. There are no final explanations. The camera remains in the city still lit, frozen in the last breath of light. Because the real impact is not in the blackout itself, but in the question that hangs in the air. How many times does history change exactly like this, while everything still seems normal? And with this image, silence finally makes sense. If you've made it this far, it's because those minutes made sense to you, because somehow you also felt that silence before the story changed. This channel exists for exactly that, to reconstruct with care and respect those forgotten moments when everything still seemed normal and no one imagined what was about to happen. If this kind of historical recreation hooks you, makes you reflect, and puts you in the scene, signing up is the best way to continue living these stories with me. Tell me something in the comments. At what point did you realize that something was wrong? Or simply write, "I made it to the end." It shows me that you felt the weight of those last few minutes as much as I did. And if, at some point in the video, you found yourself walking down these streets, hearing these sounds, trusting in this light, leave the like. It helps the video reach those who also like this type of slow, deep, and human narrative. There is a video here on the side that complements this subject. Click and stay with me there.